Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I am naturopath, founder, and formulator at the Kidney Disease Solution and Kidney Coach and Ketosis. But today I want to introduce you to someone very special. She's becoming part of our network, and we're super excited. It's Jessianna Seville, and she is the founder and the director of Kidney Nutrition Institute across in the US, and they are a bunch of amazing switched on renal dietitians that are really doing some amazing things. And I feel really blessed that Jessianna and I have been able to connect and do some work together and just really collaborate and talk about things of how we treat, and nice to know that we're both on the same page. So I'm really thrilled to have you with us today, Jessianna. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I told my husband the other day, I was like, I have literally looked for years. Like when we started to practice, I wanted to find a naturopath and holistic clinician. Literally looked for years to find you.
Well, we're so glad you did. So I'm like, this is fantastic. So Jessianna does so many amazing things with her team, but one of her absolute passions is polycystic kidney disease, and probably haven't come across anyone in a group of people that really know this condition inside and out and really are doing some amazing things with it. So we wanted to chat about that today and really give you guys some great information on that. And I really wanted to hear Jessianna's take on that, of how she treats it, her understanding of it, what causes it, and all of those sort of things. So I'm going to just hand across to you, Jessianna, and just start by telling everybody what polycystic, or actually first, if you want to introduce yourself more about what you and the team do, and then we can jump into the polycystic if you like, just so people really get a good understanding of why I think you're so good in this field.
Well, it's again, great to be here. So just as a quick intro, because I know most people don't want to hear about us, they want to hear about PKD, and I love talking about that anyways. But our group is a collaborative group of renal dietitians. We are like zoned in, focused on creating precision nutrition methods for kidney disease in particular. Like, how can we take the most cutting edge research and put it into practice for our patients? How do we develop the recipes and the food? How do we find the right tools? How do we apply, functional nutrition into kidney disease in particular? And we have found that approach has brought more questions into our life than answers, but also some really, really compelling progress. And so we're just really proud to have a group of people that are, we're all thinking about it, bringing in experiences from different patients, and being able to explore what you can actually do on a high level. So, and PKD, how it fits into this is really interesting. So about 2022, so I would say 2.5 years ago, I considered PKD the same as CKD, and like every kidney disease was just kidney disease. And this is kind of a funny story, but I saw an article come out on our nephrology network about wow, keto diets might be able to stop PKD, and my initial reaction was just that's good, but yeah, right, way too much protein. There's no way that would ever fly. But we believe in being open-minded and exploring all possibilities and being really thorough. So I was going out to California for a conference, and I reached out to the researcher and asked if I could just meet him and just talk about this a little bit and understand more. And so I was able to go to Dr. Thomas Wine's, his lab at UC Santa Barbara. Met there with him and his very smart team. I felt kind of intimidated because they're all masterful biologists, biochemists. And it really started us on a path of thinking about PKD very differently. And what that opened up to us was this whole world of PKD being so different. Of course, kidney disease is an underlying theme with all different types of kidney disease, but PKD is so different, not just on a mechanism of what happens for progression, but it's different even as a community. It's different with the emotional load that comes with it. It's a 100% different disease state. And because of that, we felt like it needed a different nutrition approach. It couldn't just be what we were doing with all of our other kidney patients, because that wasn't getting us results anyways.
Interesting. So why don't we just start by saying what is PKD? Because obviously now your understanding of PKD sounds quite different from the box that maybe it was in. So why don't you give me your take on what you see PKD is as a disease and its mechanism and all of those sort of things?
Yeah, so PKD in the most simplistic sense is when people get these massive fluid-filled cysts on their kidneys. The kidneys can grow really, really big. If you look online, and the kidneys can be like big, like this big, like 50 pounds.
Yeah.
You'll get really, really big fluid-filled cysts, and that fluid in those cysts, especially depending on where they end up being, cause pressure on different parts of the kidneys and eventually causes kidney decline, because it just kills off the nephrons, creates a ton of inflammation. So at its core, it's a cystic disease, a kidney growth disease. And it is a long, slow decline. It's genetically passed on for most people. There is some spontaneous PKD, which is always really interesting to us. But for most people, it's passed on, and they've had an aunt or an uncle or a mom or a dad or a grandma or grandpa that they've seen struggle with it. So comes with a lot of baggage for a lot of people too.
Yeah. And when you see people, is it something that gets diagnosed quickly, or is it something generally that it's later diagnosed once the disease is sort of taken off and that, you know, you're starting to see kidney decline? Or would someone be able to pick that disease up early before maybe the kidneys are really damaged?
Well, because it's genetic, you can pick it up early because you have a strong possibility of having it if you've had a family member who's had it. People don't always choose to test right away, just for a lot of reasons, such as life insurance. But it can be picked up quickly because you might have a propensity towards it. Otherwise, when we see people come in newly diagnosed, it's on usually for something else. So like someone got in a bike accident and then they had pain and they had a scan and then they found PKD. So a lot of people, not everyone, a lot of people live symptom free. If you have symptoms, it would be like aching pain in your flank. Aching flank pain is really, really common. That might be where it's picked up, is when people go in to get that diagnosed. But if it's random, if people aren't watching for it because of a family member, it's usually something else happens. There's a scan or they test the urine and then they find PKD.
Yeah, that's definitely been my experience too. It's been a offhand or just an extra finding when they're looking at other things. Exactly. So someone comes into you, they're diagnosed with PKD. Sort of what levels are you seeing any changes in their kidney function, then changes to their BUN, creatinine, EGFR? Or when people come to see you, is it sort of before that, or is it a bit of everything maybe?
We see everything. We've had our second patient that we worked with on a ketogenic approach, which I know we'll talk about in a second. He was due for 6 when he started. But we have people that have worked with us and their GFR is really high, like 70, 80, 90, and they're just trying to get their lifestyle set up so that they can change the game for themselves. And so we see all sorts of stages, and the nutrition changes a little bit based on the stage. So it is pretty important where people are coming in.
And so someone comes in to see you with PKD. What is your treatment approach to them? Do you start with other testing? Do you put them straight on a diet? What would Jessianna do if I came to you and said, okay, I've got PKD, help?
So for us in our practice, we think about the different opportunities. So what are all the different things that are playing into the disease state so that we can look at where the low-hanging fruit is to start. And then the next step is considering, what is going to be most reasonable for the patient. For PKD, kind of how we stratify it in our brains is we can do a ketogenic diet. We use a really plant-heavy ketogenic diet. But if we can do a ketogenic diet, if that's going to work for someone, not only in their lifestyle, but physiologically, that's where we want to aim first. I think there's a lot of merit to that. If that is not quite the right place for some people, then maybe we talk at some of the other low-hanging fruit like sodium or fluid intake, or how are you going to manage oxalates, or what is your gut health like? I think gut is a really compelling piece of PKD, and it's going to be something that you'll see increase in the research. Which, I mean, it's just everywhere, but there's a lot of reasons for why the gut would be so important. So anyways, it just depends on the person. So if you come in, we have a conversation, we talk about the science behind it. I like to find out what was your family's history with progression, because it gives me an idea on potentially how fast you would progress. What's your current lifestyle? So, I mean, if you eat super healthy and you're exercising a lot, those are all going to help with glucose management, insulin levels, which drives cyst growth. And so maybe you're at stage 2 and you're 85 years old. I'm probably not going to recommend ketogenic diet at that point, because you're going to outlive your kidneys for sure. There's no way at that point you're going to end up on dialysis. So it just depends. But if you're 30 and you're stage 3, and your GFR has been dropping, then we say, hey, like, let's be aggressive. Like, let's really dig into this. And I think you should start with the ketogenic diet. So let us teach you how you get into ketosis and what that's going to mean.
So talk to me about the science behind ketogenic diets and polycystic kidney disease. And what did you find out those sort of 2.5 years ago when you were at the labs in Santa Barbara?
Yeah, so ketogenic diets, here's kind of how the research scaled, and this will give you a good idea on why we use them. So what happened in Dr. Wine's lab, they were studying this, and they had seen some research. You look at the PKD research on hypocaloric diets, these low-calorie diets, potentially impacting PKD. So in their rat studies, they had fed the rats this hypocaloric diet, and the rats ate all the food at once. And then the smart researchers here, they say, okay, well, we saw a reduction in cysts. So was it that the rats like ate a low calorie diet? Was that actually it? Like, why does a low calorie diet help? Or was it that they had this whole like fasting period? So then they did a fasting approach, and they saw a cyst reduction again in the animal model. I said, okay, well, why does fasting help PKD? I said, okay, well, is it because the rats are getting in ketosis? Because they were getting in ketosis because their metabolisms are super fast. So then they tested a ketogenic approach, and they saw cyst reduction. And then it goes on to, well, what part of ketosis made a difference? And then they tested just BHB, and they saw a difference. So for us, this is an animal model, right? We don't have a human study yet, though there is one coming out from University of Cologne soon, and then we're involved with one in Toronto next year. So we don't have an animal study yet. The reason why we decided to we decided to dive in and use a ketogenic diet now is because essentially for someone with polycystic kidney disease, you don't have any options. Like you are given the option of GnRQ or tolvaptan, maybe, and that's just to slow it. And beyond that, you're really just told, like, cross your fingers, we'll manage your blood pressure, and hopefully you're one of the people that progresses really slow. And for many, many people that we've met with PKD, finally having something they could do, like really do, that might make a difference for them was huge. And they were doing it already even before we dove into this. And for us, we're like, well, can we create a kidney safe ketogenic approach? Like, is that possible to create a kidney safe ketogenic approach? And you can. And so that's what we did. And that's what we use to work with our patients.
So walk me through a kidney, because obviously some people sitting here listening to this, hearing about ketosis, they're going to think, oh my goodness, that's so much protein and I'm not getting any of my micronutrients through maybe lots of vegetables and things like that, which promote gut health, that you were talking about, the link, which I want to definitely circle back to about your understanding between gut health and PKD. But what is your kidney safe approach in a ketogenic diet? What does that look like for people?
So for us, what we wanted to do, and this is a little bit controversial even in the PKD keto community, but what we wanted to do is take what are the current kidney guidelines, which they're lower protein, right? Right now, the current recommendation is 0.6 to 0.6 to maybe 0.8 grams, sometimes even lower. So it's a low protein approach. Can we do low protein with keto? Of course you can, because keto is not a high protein diet, it's a high fat diet. So once we saw that we could get our protein pretty close to that level, which we do, and get people into mild ketosis, we don't do heavy ketosis because we just can't. We have to use a ton of plants. And we made it very plant focused. Like our patients regularly are eating like 30 to 40 plus grams of fiber a day. They're eating a ton of fiber because it's very, very plant focused. Once we saw we could put these pieces together, it's like, can we have low protein? Can we keep it pretty plant dominant? And can we manage oxalates and have food to eat? Then we can do it. And so we played around with it a whole bunch. Diana Bruin, who's one of the dietitians at KNI, she put up these massive like Post-it notes around her hallway. She sent me a picture of, I wish I could find that picture, where she's like low oxalate, low protein, keto, like she listed out the foods, and then she would just cross-reference to kind of create like a quote unquote list of like, where can we start? And then we started working with people on it. But you know, it's a plant-focused approach. It's not plant-based, like it's not vegan, but it's plant-focused. So we really, really heavily emphasize the plants. As you get, it's so nutrient dense. I wanted to pull up a picture, but it's so nutrient dense. It's colorful. I mean, we use some berries, so we're not, again, deep ketosis. We use some blueberries and strawberries and a little bit of pineapple. And then we have tons of greens, so many greens, and a modified amount of protein. It's a beautiful diet, and it is really honestly tastes good.
Amazing. And what sort of fats are you using? Because obviously most people think, you know, fatty meat and things like that. So being plant-based, is it nut butters? What are you using? And being low oxalate, where would you get enough fat from to bump people into ketosis?
Good question. So we use a lot of olive oil. So we use like sauces. So if you're cooking vegetables or eggs, like we make sure you have a good sauce with it. We use a good amount of coconut for people that like it. We have a lot of fat bombs that are coconut based. Some good grass-fed butters we'll use. Those are avocado we'll use as well. We haven't really ended up having a ton of potassium issues. Like it's worked out fine. So a lot of avocado as well. So we're trying to use whole food fats. Get fat from fatty fishes. So we love to use salmon. It's really good fatty fish. And we do use a small amount of dairy. We don't do a lot of dairy in our meal setups, but dairy is a really nice add-on for a short snack. We also use nuts, like you said. We focus on some of the lower oxalate nuts, like walnuts, pecans, and then seeds. A lot of sunflower seed. We use a lot of sunflower seed, and some pumpkin seed butter as well. Works really good.
Yeah. Actually sounds quite delicious.
It is super good. We tried it out. We lived it. So, I mean, right now, I follow the ketogenic diet. I think the food is amazing. So.
And I can imagine too, I'm digressing here a bit, but eating a diet like that won't just have an effect on PKD. That's going to have some really positive effects on a whole pile of things, including nervous system, gut health with all the fiber that you were talking about, which will lead me back to talking about gut health in relation to PKD, but blood sugar levels and the cardiovascular system and all the other diseases that we know go with kidney disease that people may or may not have with PKD. But I bet people generally must come off those, use those diets and just feel better in general, not only just getting shrinkage of their, cysts on their kidneys as well.
They do. Yeah. One of my patients right now, she has PKD. Her GFR hangs around 20 to 30. But when she came to work with us, she was fully vegan, 100% plant-based. She has always been very proactive. Whatever I can do, I will do. But she didn't, and I'm not trashing on vegan diets. They definitely have a place, but she didn't actually feel super good. even on a vegan diet. Her lab numbers were kind of abnormal. And this approach for her was a total game changer. Her GFR has stayed very, very steady, and it was on like the dropping decline fast. So she stayed steady for the last 8 months. But all of her other labs are like beautiful. Like they have just very much normalized. She feels really, really, really good. Her blood pressure has normalized, like just a great success story on a ketogenic diet can do. Very, very mild ketosis. She never got like over 1 on her ketones, but like it just changed the game for her in a lot of ways.
And so there's a couple of things I want to ask you. So how are you're well, not obviously, let's explain to people how we measure ketones and how we know if someone's in a ketogenic state and what you're looking for, maybe what you would change. Because I know in clinical practice, someone like me who has eaten a keto-based diet for such a long time, I don't even need to try now. My body now favors ketosis, and I can eat. I just ate a punnet of raspberries for breakfast and I'll still be in ketosis. Whereas other people, you find sometimes you have to margin everything just to get their body to go down that pathway. So what has been your experience with, do you manage to get everybody in mild ketosis, which is what I would prefer as well. I don't want people in heavy ketosis, and how you're measuring it, just so for people that don't know, and then what you do if someone isn't in there or all those sort of things.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for us, we prefer to use a finger prick as our measure. We usually use the Keto Mojo monitor, but we're using a finger prick measure of ketones. We have a couple of people that don't like that, so we'll use the breath measures of ketones, but primarily we use finger prick measures because we get a really exact number. And we take the first 2 weeks, especially the first 2 weeks of the nutrition protocol, to figure out how their body's going to react to ketosis. Because you're right, some people, they can't get in good ketosis. We actually explored this in our practice last week and reached out to some really good keto focus clinicians. We were finding our perimenopausal or menopausal women that like estrogen really helps with ketosis and the hormones.
Yeah.
They weren't getting into good ketosis, and we're like scratching our head because they're so diligent with their diet, but hormones can be really impactful. But in that case, unless someone's going to do hormone replacement therapy, in that case, we are working on getting still in the best diet possible, because just by virtue of cutting back carbs and I think regulating the insulin resistance, you still are going to get an impact. I really think you can still get an impact even if you're not in high ketosis. And like for me, I'm really thrilled, honestly, if ketone levels are hitting over 0.5, that is technically still ketosis, even though it's not high, it's super high. And with the amount of fiber and the amount of plants we put in people's diets, we don't expect that they're going to really hit ketones over like 2.5, 3, unless they're really super active.
Yeah, and I think long-term maintenance-wise, a small amount of ketosis, because you're still in ketosis, is ketosis, right? So that's still super impactful. And I think it is better long-term anyway. And they've done all, you would know, all these amazing studies on athletes that, people think you need all these carbohydrates. And then they had all these really amazing endurance athletes that switched to ketosis, and that lactic acid burn when they were running marathons and things like that disappeared, because you're using a completely different metabolic pathway to generate energy. And it was really fascinating to hear. So what I wanted you to explain to everyone is, what is it about ketosis that affects PKD? And you mentioned insulin and growth factors. Can you join those dots together for people about why it is that cutting down carbs and regulating blood sugars and what ketones and ketosis has to do with slowing down the progression of the cyst growth?
Good. That's a really good question. So what we understand right now, and again, this is a new emerging therapy, I think still there's a lot more for us to understand. But preliminarily, what is theorized, what came out from Dr. Wyman's research, is that the cysts really grow on glucose and sugar. That is essentially their fuel source to grow. And so when you take out glucose as your main energy source, the cysts don't have anything to grow from, and that's why they were shrinking. That is like the most simplistic way Dr. Wines will say cysts are sugar hungry. They love sugar.
That's a perfect way to explain it.
Yeah. So, and I mean, there's some similarities to other diseases where there is, like cancer, like sugar drives cancer growth too, is what some of the theorized pieces are there as well. And I think there's more than just that pathway. I think that's probably overly simplistic, but that is essentially why they think ketosis helps.
So in sense, PKD is almost a metabolic type disease, a bit like insulin resistance and diabetes and all those things that we already know have an effect on kidneys, yeah?
100%. I definitely think so.
And it's interesting too, because we know in diabetes, it's that blood sugar dysregulation that then has an effect on the nephrons and the endothelial tissue in there. So, I mean, I know this is a cyst filling up, but it's interesting. We were talking about, before we started, Jessianna and I were talking about, they've just found dopamine receptors in the kidneys, but you wonder if there's some sort of blood sugar or, the glucose receptor or something to do with insulin and all of those sort of things floating around in the kidneys that we, and just how that mechanism works that maybe we don't know about yet. So I'd be interested to see as that research goes, huh?
That's what I'm saying. The more you know, the more questions you have.
The more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
That's exactly right.
So let me circle back to the gut. So this is something, obviously, as naturopaths, we've been drilled into it since we started, that disease starts in the gut. And it's when we caught up the other week with your team, it was really great to hear that gut health is something that's really on your radar when it comes to kidney health, because I think you were the first group of people I'd come across that are actually considering gut health when it comes to kidney disease and treating someone as a whole human rather than we're just looking at kidneys. So circle back and just explain to me what you think gut health has to do with PKD and just maybe kidney disease in general and how you guys would look at that and treat that.
Sure. So I'll tell you why this came particularly on our radar. Is the first thing is we're talking with a lot of people, and at this point, because we work in this, like we have chosen to go down this path of learning if we can do ketosis, that has put us in a very particular place in the PKD community. As we've talked with many, many people, one thing I've been really interested in, and we started kind of mentally tracking for ourselves, is why is this person suddenly having a big drop in GFR and this person isn't? And why did this person progress faster than their mom and this person didn't? So in that, like as we've worked with patients and kind of seen different stories, we started to notice that people that seem to be progressing faster, they also tended to have other things going on, especially with their gut. And then I was talking with I'm going to forget his last name. I think it's Mueller, but I was talking with Felix Mueller. He is a patient with PKD, and he was doing ketogenic diets many years ago. And really, he's a self-proclaimed biohacker, but he's done a lot of really, really good, like his thought processes on PKD are so, so amazing. And we were talking a little bit about this, and he mentioned to me, he said, I really think the gut plays a huge impact. There's been a couple of studies where they saw PKD change in the case of a sterile gut. So I don't think even any of us really know exactly how that works. I think it has to do with endotoxins and how those end up driving growth in tissues in and of themselves. And endotoxins happen when you have major dysbiosis or like unhappy good bacteria that aren't getting enough fiber. So I think it's something that we will learn more in the future, but it's on our radar. For us, the other big piece when it comes to the gut is I don't find that a lot of our patients are really they don't feel super good doing a heavy fat ketogenic diet if their gut's a mess. And so we'll start by doing a little bit of gut healing, which for us can be as simple as a digestive enzyme. It can be more aggressive, like doing a stool test and like getting rid of yeast, getting rid of, other yucky bacteria, rebalancing the gut. But until we do a little bit of gut work, some people, I just feel like they don't either get into good ketosis or they don't tolerate the fat loads and they feel icky. So we use it both to make the ketogenic diet work, focus on gut health, and also because I do think it's going to impact progression of the disease.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I mean, if we look at, I run a lot of doctors' data, GI 360, I think is my favorite stool test. I love that one because it does everything. But if you've got people with lots of protein or not enough fiber and just the type of bacteria that you get in there, and then they're producing they're rather not producing enough of our short chain fatty acids, which we need to feed the good microbiome. So I definitely think there's something going on there, and just not just endotoxins, but just the way the body can produce anti-inflammatory proteins and all of those sort of things. It's so regulated by the gut, right? So I was so excited when your team mentioned gut health to me the other day.
Everything, like I just feel like we have so much more to learn about that to get super precise in how we treat people. But it like impacts CKD. I really think it impacts PKD. Obviously, it impacts autoimmune. So
Absolutely. Okay, so someone's come in and you've got them going and you've got them on a plant-based ketogenic diet. You may or may not have looked at the gut if they have or haven't gotten into ketosis. Are there supplements? I know there are certain supplements that we can use that will speed up the people moving into ketosis. And I know there's been some research with things like BHP. So what's been your experience with that? Is that something you use? Are there any other supplements that you really like or things that people can do to help them move into ketosis, not just using diet?
Yeah, that's a super good question. So there's a couple of ways to break this up. First, you have supplements that need to support a ketogenic diet. And we have supplements that can help people have more ketosis in their ketogenic diet. So on the supportive side, like supplements that we always include for our patients, we always include a B complex, some sort of a multivitamin, because you just have to have a good B status to process all that fat, or it can start becoming inflammatory. So you have to have a good B vitamin. You must have a good B status. So that's an essential for us. Because fat metabolism relies on L-carnitine. A lot of people will kind of run through their carnitine stores, and we're a lower protein diet, so we get a lot from like meat or other things. They'll run through their carnitine stores really fast, and they can't get into ketosis either. So we use L-carnitine to help support the diet as well. And then I do find in our approach that we need to be mindful of minerals. That's what we'll say, mindful of minerals, whether it's zinc or selenium. Those are the ones that we can get them in the diet, but sometimes we need to support them with some supplementation if it looks like the food patterns aren't supporting enough in the diet. Magnesium is, one that we always look at as well. So let's just like support the dietary approach. On the other side of things, getting in better ketosis. So yes, beta hydroxybutyrate is out there. The product that is new on the market this year came from Dr. Wein's lab is the Keto Citra, which is a BHB. It's a no sodium BHB. Has salt in it, which is really critical for a lot of people, especially with PKD, because sodium is one of the big opportunities to leverage for helping your kidneys out and your blood pressure. So sodium free, has a really nice electrolyte mix with some calcium and mag in it. And the calcium and mag, those can help with oxalate, being able to bind oxalates in the gut. It also helps alkalinize the urine. The reason that that's important is that another potential cyst driver are these little mini calcium oxalate crystals. They're microscopic, but our body can form them in acidic urine, or if we've eaten a very heavy oxalate diet. And so if you can bind the oxalate in the gut with calcium, and then you can make sure the urine's alkaline, you're less likely to create these microcrystals. And in PKD, what happens is these microcrystals, what they do is they cause the tubules to expand so that they can kind of flush out. When you expand that tubules, it activates several pathways that cause cyst growth. So if you can decrease how much the tubules have to expand to get out the crystals, theoretically that should help slow progression of PKD. So Keto Citra is a nice product because it combines that BHB, which is helpful for ketosis, along with some of those minerals and some citrate as well. So it's a good product, but you can use BHB. We have some people that use MCT oil. They give a good shot of that. That'll pretty fast. And those things can help out as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for explaining that. That was a really great explanation of how oxalates can be linked to things. And obviously oxalates can cause a whole pile of other troubles as well. But yeah, I've definitely seen the link to that. So what else? What else do you want to add? Or do you want to talk about any case studies? I mean, it sounds like you've had some great success with people. What are you generally seeing in practice when people can really get their ketosis levels under control? And you talked about that one patient with her eGFR of around 20/30 that's been stable. What else have you seen in clinical practice when you've had these approaches being implemented with people?
Sure, on a couple different scales. So we've had some people, one of the patients who went through our group program, Renew, which we went through our nonprofit, her GFR went from like 50 to 70 over 6 months. Wow. Like a plant-focused ketogenic approach. It was crazy. She's like, I can't believe that happened. So we've had some really, really amazing results like that. Like for PKD, it is and traditionally has just been a slow march down to dialysis transplant, slow march down. And what we're seeing now is people will, in that like 30 to 60, 70 area, we are seeing GFRs go up. If you join any of the Facebook groups, there's lots of good testimonials there. And even in our practice, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing at the later stages more a stabilization. And at the really late stages, we have found that ketosis is it's a slower. We haven't had a patient yet who their GFR has been like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and they've been able to reverse it back. But what we've seen is that we can really prolong their kidney function so they can get to transplant. And I'm hoping more and more as we learn over time that we'll be able to get that group that's in that lower stage to actually recover some function. But it's been a really big game changer for those later stages to give them time to get to transplant and reduce symptoms massively.
Amazing. And I guess too, if we think about it just from a pathophysiology point of view, when they're in those later stages, they've got multiple cysts that will be filled. And you wonder too, we know in central obesity and insulin resistance that basically the central abdominal tissue becomes its own organ. And I wonder in things like PKD, and I don't know enough about what's in the cysts and blood sugar, but whether there's a similar pattern going on, because that's why people find it so hard to lose weight around the middle when they've got insulin resistance, because that organ's producing its own insulin, whether there's potentially something like that going on in the kidneys when it's so far down the line, and basically most of your kidney, unfortunately, is going to be cyst filled, whether it's becoming its own insulin driver, even when you're taking out stuff. That's something I'd be really interested to do. And it's a shame we can't measure the blood sugar level inside the kidney tissue, because that's what I think would be super fascinating to find out.
Well, I was going to say, just piggybacking off of that, there was a study that came out last year from University of Colorado, and they only measured weight loss and PKD progression. That was it. They put them on a lower calorie diet and weight loss, and actually had made that connection with insulin producing from the abdominal tissue, but I wonder if that was part of it.
Yeah.
Back for them. So that's some good results.
Yeah, I'd be fascinated it's where my brain goes. I'm like, that's what we know happens in insulin resistance and why people can't shift it, because it becomes its own organ. So then you have to do a lot of exercise and other bits and pieces. And I wonder too whether exercising, because that changes the whole insulin pathways, but I don't know whether that would have an effect on kidneys. We can't get your kidneys to get on the treadmill, so.
I don't know how we do that yet.
I'd be fascinated by that. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Jessianna, about PKD and your treatment strategy and what you're looking at with it?
I guess just the only thing I would add as summary that I think is exciting is that there is hope now, right? Like for PKD, and that's what's cool when you can push the boundaries on conventional therapy and look at other things. There is now, I've mentioned this in many of my talks on PKD, but even if keto is not the answer, if it's not the ultimate answer, at least what it is doing is it's allowing us to see that pushing that pathway is giving some people results. And so there's something to that. And that opens up so many more doors in the research and in how we think about the disease to make a change. Like, I really honestly think the most important research that came out in the kidney world in the last 50 years was the keto PKD research, because it was such a dramatic shift in how we think about the disease state. And that will lead to so many things. Like, we haven't really, this is something you guys are super good at that we want to like absorb from you, but we haven't really explored like what are all the herbals that we would use in that type of a situation, because it would be different than CKD. What would be other supplements that we could really push on? I mean, we've done a little bit with berberine and looked at binders, that sort of thing, but we haven't like really aggressively pursued that for our patients. It's a totally amazing opportunity. So I think right now for PKD is so exciting because there are changes happening for people. People are seeing changes in their kidney function, and that is only going to lead to more questions and more answers and a more precise therapy for everyone. And I think that's how you actually change the disease.
Yeah, thank you for summarizing that way. And it is a big thing. It's what we see not just in PKD, but CKD. You know, I was just talking to you before, we had a testimonial that's up on our Facebook page of a woman that was on dialysis for 9 months that's got her creatinine from and this is in CKD, and I don't know the full details. We're waiting for Dr. Carla to interview her, but her EGFR or her creatinine went from 10 down to 2.6 into a normal range. So this is the thing we're starting to see. Is I have always believed that the body is this amazing thing that can heal itself if you give it the right tools. And of course, the narrative around PKD, as you say, slow, steady decline, and CKD, the same, it's incurable. But it's nice to see a group of people that are changing the narrative around that. And that's the feedback we get from our patients and our customers and clients all the time, is that's the thing that people hold on to, is the hope part, because the narrative around that has been so different for them. So yeah, the hope, there is definitely hope, and scientific studies to back that up in PKD and CKD. It's not too far behind, I think. I think we'll start to see a real change in the next couple of years with more research coming out of things that we can do.
Yep, absolutely.
So if people want to reach you and work with you, how can they get hold of you, and whereabouts are you located? Do you work with anyone around the world? Because it sounds like you've got really some online virtual tools these days. So how would people get hold of you if they're like, oh, I've got PKD and I really need to work with Jessianna and her team?
So we centralize primarily US and Canada. On occasion, if we can, then we'll take people overseas. They can always reach out and ask, and we'll look into it or find them a clinician. But they just go to our website, kidneynutritioninstitute.org, and then they book into the first call with the dietitian. The dietitian, similar to you guys, is going to really understand the person, what's going on, and we build out for all of our patients a treatment plan, which is like, here are the nutrition priorities for you to master, for you to learn, and we are 150,000% behind you to help you master them, give you the tools to master them, teach you what they mean. So you don't have to feel scared about this, teach you to be an advocate. So they just book that first appointment with the dietitian. They'll map out a plan for them. And then from there, we take that plan and work through it over several weeks. Our goal is for our patients to give them what I would call medical independence. We want them the masters of their journey. We want to teach them how to fish, not just eat fish, like this is the saying goes. So we really teach them how to master their disease, and through like a holistic nutritional lifestyle.
Amazing. And I love that. Yes. Teach your man to fish. That's definitely our strategy as well. So fantastic. Well, I really want to thank you for joining me today, Jessianna, and with sharing your knowledge with us. And I know you're an absolute expert in the field of PKD and CKD in general anyway. I'll I'll pop all the information below in the comments of how you can reach Jessianna and her amazing team at the Kidney Nutrition Institute over there in the US. If you have any questions or you want to reach out to her, everything's on the website. Otherwise, you can leave a comment below and I will make sure that I get back to you, Jessianna. Thank you again for joining us today. I really appreciate your time and knowledge, and hopefully we'll have you back to talk some other amazing things and all things kidney disease.
Anytime. Thank you so much for letting me be here.
No problems. Talk to you later.